The Princess and the Pea. I've always loved this tale, and now I know why. It's because it deals with hypersensitivity. Hypersensitivity is the story of my life, and I'm going to share with you that hypersensitivity is often seen as a weakness, but in reality, it's a leadership superpower. Who among you think to be hypersensitive? Could you please raise your hand? Thank you. In fact, according to the work of an American psychologist, Ellen Aron, 1 out of 5 people is considered to be born with a highly sensitivity. I am one of them. And the characteristic of hypersensitivity are more or less identical for people. It depends on the different individual. Hypersensitivity is often experienced as a burden by those who have it and as a weakness by others. I've got a box here, and this box deals with hypersensitivity. It contains the princess and the pea. Let me show you. So, if we take the story of the princess and the pea, as you see, the princess raised on several mattresses in order to have a very good night. But in fact, she lived a nightmare because she couldn't sleep all the night. Because just a little pea had been placed under those 20 mattresses. And in the morning, she was aching all over. Indeed, one of the characteristics of hypersensitive people is to have very high developed senses. We feel things, but others don't. And it is perfectly described by Gustave Flaubert like this. I was gifted by an absurd sensitivity. What scratches others tells me apart. In my case, it is my intuition, the sixth sense, which is highly developed. It manifests itself with images, strong sensation that spontaneously announce me an event. It was described by Albert Einstein like this: a feeling at your fingertips. For a long time, I considered it as a burden, even a curse, because my intuitions concerned mainly dramatic events. I think particularly to one event. It was the death of my father in a plane crash. I was 8, and I knew for sure when I saw him take on this plane that it was the last time I would see him. As a result, I tried to stop feeling all my emotions and all my intuition, but to no avail. One of the characteristics of hypersensitive people is also to have very strong emotions. It's like a wave of emotions that turns into a tsunami or an uncontrollable roller coaster. It creates a feeling of always being out of step and being not understood or even judged by others in a cold and indifferent world like the corporate world. Our brain also is running at a full speed all the time because of the flow of our thoughts and imaginations, overactive imagination. It exhausts us, leaving us without energy. And as we tend to overadapt ourselves to feel like everyone else, we are very much more vulnerable to stress. So, we may understand that being hypersensitive is not a small journey in the workplace, but it's not a hopeless situation. Well managed hypersensitivity becomes a real gift. When the princess and the pea found the little pea, she was like an hypersensitive people. And because she found this little pea, and she was the only one to feel this pea, she could marry the prince, and her uniqueness became an asset. What I've just explained to you in the imaginary world is the same in the workplace. So to transform your hypersensitivity into a real gift, you don't need to be a real princess. You just need to look the way you look at it. So instead of looking at your hypersensitivity as a weakness, I invite you to look at it with kindness. Because if it's there is a reason. So the first step is just to accept your uniqueness and to put in place some protocols. Here are some examples. The first one is to sort out our emotions, our strong emotions, those that belong to us and those that belong to others, because we are emotional sponges. And for our own emotions, welcome them, understand them, listen to the message. For instance, anger tells me that something is wrong and that I need to put some boundaries and to enforce them. The second one is reconnecting to our body with mindful breathing, for example, because it helps to reduce the intensity of our emotions. The third one is to take care of our energy. Energy is our battery. So we need to know how to recharge it and take the time to do it. It can be reading a book, practicing a sport, and getting enough sleep. We need also to choose consciously where we would like to spend our energy. Do you realize that these three tips can already change your life? Last but not least, it is really recommended to evolve in a professional environment that understands hypersensitivity and to occupy a position that perfectly suits you and values hypersensitivity. In my case, it was when I chose to leave finance to go into recruitment. When I realized that being hypersensitive, enabled me to identify very rapidly and with certainty the right candidate to the right job. Feedbacks from my clients and from my managers confirmed me that I'd been right to use my hypersensitivity and that my intuition was a real asset in my profession. By becoming a professional coach, my intuition has taken on greater importance. Images and strong feelings that come up during the coaching sessions are at my client service and accelerate the process of awareness for change. I have in mind an example. One of my clients, during a coaching session, who started the session by going off in all directions. Suddenly I had an image of fireworks and a funeral. So I shared it with my client, and immediately she realized that she actually needed structure and a framework to move forward. Connection to hypersensitivity made her connect the dots, and the rest of the session was totally different, enabling her to achieve the goals even more efficiently. As for me, I realized by being a professional coach is a very good fit for me. And I wish you to find the position that suits us to become tomorrow's leaders. I have very good news for you. One of the soft skills the world needs in tomorrow's leaders is hypersensitivity. And I've got a surprise for you. Would you like me to open the other side of the box? Yes. Okay. So let's go. When the princess married the prince, she demonstrated that she had a superpower, and she became Supergirl. Many celebrities, by being Supergirl or Superman, demonstrated that hypersensitivity is a superpower. When I tell you that, I naturally think of artists, since art is a way of expressing hypersensitivity. Examples include Marilyn Monroe, Adrienne Brody, Scarlett Johansson, Nicole Kidman, Salvador Dali, Picasso, Frida Kahlo, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Woody Allen. And famous scientists and politicians are also sensitive, like Albert Einstein, Carl Jung, Barack Obama, and Martin Luther King. If we look at the business world, in a fast-paced world where AI is advancing at a very dizing pace, and that the world is changing very rapidly, where the companies have to constantly reinvent themselves. I am totally convinced that one of the soft skills that tomorrow's leaders have to have is hypersensitivity. And I have some examples about this. A keen eye on details that others can't see, a rapid connection to dots, intuitive skills, in short, to be visionaries, be creative, innovative, able to think out of the box to find new solutions, be empathetic to better know the needs of our customers and their teams, and have an idea of a common sense to propose a new approach, a more human approach to business. And you know what? Hypersensitive has this kind of qualities, and they are totally complementary with the purely rational profiles. And when you know that Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson have used their intuition to make their decision, it's clearly that hypersensitivity is not only the superpower, it's also a leadership superpower. I have realized by what all my clients have in common is their hypersensitivity. And when I look backwards like Steve Jobs and connect the dots, I understand now that accepting my hypersensitivity helps me to support my clients, leaders, entrepreneurs with atypical profiles, hypersensitive, high potentials, multi-potentials, to embrace their uniqueness in the service of their professional success, and to help today's young adults to become tomorrow's leaders. My intuition, you know, my little inner voice, is my superpower. And you, now, if you listen to your superpower, what does it tell you to make an impact on the world?